shift, beat the seamen stroll, catch the midnight drift. Cigar chewing Charlie in that newspaper nest, grifting a hot horse tips on who's running the best. And I'm blinded by the neon, don't try to change my tune. I thought I heard a saxophone, I'm drunk on the moon. Silver slipper is pouring champagne stars. Broadway's like a serpent pulling shiny top-down cars. Larimer is teeming with that undulated beat as some Bonneville is screaming its way wildly down the street. By the neon, don't try to change my tune. I thought I heard a saxophone, I'm drunk on the moon.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the living room. It's great to have you here. Thanks for coming along on this early start. We're doing that because one of our guests is in Scotland and we don't want to keep him up all night. It's really a great pleasure to have this program with the YesMen and Igor Vamos and Alex Rivera with us. We've had a great time in the living room so far. We miss being in the theater with all you guys. But the programs have been fantastic and your feedback has been fantastic. I hope you're all enjoying it. I want to remind you that if you want to ask a question, click that Q&A link on your Zoom box, type it in, and we'll be able to get to it. We'd love to have your questions. I hope you like the movie. We love the movie here at CCA. Yes Men is kind of an animating spirit of the CCA. They use art to explore deep social issues and political issues. That's what we like to do too. And so we're really grateful to have them here. Just want to mention some upcoming programs. On Friday, we've got the Oscar-winning filmmaker Marshall Curry, who's going to play his film Street Fight, which I think is one of the great political films of all time. He's going to be in conversation with Renee Villarreal, who's one of our city councilors, and I'll be there too. Next Tuesday, a very, very, very special event. It's our first listening party with Donald Nally of the group The Crossing, which is a fantastic choral group. They've had 5 Grammy nominations in the last 4 years. He's going to be in conversation with Peter Sellers and playing some tracks from his 15 or so years with The Crossing. Last time I saw Donald, we had dinner. I said, "How's everything going? What have you been doing?" He said, "Well, last night we played with the Stones." And I'm like, "That's pretty cool." So, and they have great stories to tell, like I said, and the music is otherworldly. I've been listening to a lot of it while in quarantine. And we have all kinds of other wonderful programs coming up. So check the CCA website. If you like what we're doing, if you appreciate CCA, please consider donating to our fundraiser, which is called Save Your Seat. It's also at the CCA website. And spread the word about the living room. So we're especially grateful to have here today 2 artists who I admire greatly. I've been following their work for years and years. Alex Rivera is a director and artist whose films include Sleep Dealer, which won multiple awards at the Sundance Film Festival in 2008, I think. And his new film is just coming out now. It's called The Infiltrators. It also won awards at Sundance. It's a fantastic story. It's a troubling story, but incredibly well told, of a detention camp, I guess we could call it, in Florida for undocumented workers. And we have Igor Vamos, aka Mike Bonanno, one of the founders of the Yes Men, whose work you just saw in the film Yes Men Fix the World. Please welcome Alex and Mike.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hey. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, CCA. Thank you, anybody out there in the on the other side of the quarantine screen here. Thank you for gathering with us, and thanks for having this conversation, Jason, and everybody at CCA.
Yeah, I'll just pile on. What a great, it feels like a reunion as well. I think in part because I think Alex and I crossed paths, out in San Diego in the 90s, but as well as I recall at the Taos Talking Pictures Festival,
Yeah.
which Jason was curating back in the day. So we had some fun times back in the 90s on the way to Taos and in Taos. So this feels like weirdly like a reunion. So it's good to be in a virtual reunion if we can't be in one physically.
And well, since you took us all the way back to the 90s, I guess maybe we'll start there for this this brief conversation. But I was just wondering, Igor, I know in the first Yes Men film, you tell a little bit the origin story of where your work began and where Andy's work began. But I was wondering if you wanted to maybe talk about that, or even anything before that. When did you start to get the impulse to punk as a central impulse? When did that emerge?
That's a good question. I think that the impulse is, maybe there is some fundamental human thing about mischief, that I think runs through there. I think there's something in everybody. There's a little mischief in everybody, and of course, all of our indigenous mytho-histories have these trickster characters. When they say indigenous, I mean every culture has a trickster character. European culture, Native, indigenous U.S. culture, First Nations cultures. And these and so I think that this acknowledges that there is this kind of role for mischief in general. And I think it comes, in some ways it came out naturally for me because I felt like it was a rebellion against growing up in the suburbs where there really wasn't a hell of a lot to do for, a youth, so like at a certain age, as a teenager, you start to kind of like mess with stuff because there was nothing there. And so you make something by intervening, and somehow the sort of uniformity of things, the fact that you could go to, me and a small group of friends started just doing strange things to kind of try to create something more interesting where it felt uniform and predictable.
Was that in high school or in college? Because I know you did these series of interventions in Portland.
Yeah.
But then you're in college, right?
Those were in college, and that's when I started getting a little more focused with it. But in high school in upstate New York, and I know we're both from upstate New York, you're a little bit further downstate, but we're both basically from like these kind of suburban places in upstate. And it was we would do strange things like that. I think were rebellious. And actually, when I reflect on it now, I think that there is some kind of political content. It's just we never would have conceived of it that way at the time. Like, for instance, going to the Long John Silver's seafood restaurant, like dressed as pirates, demanding free food, and with somebody in a bag. Like we'd carry in somebody in the bag and like put them down, so you wouldn't know there was a person in there, but they'd start screaming at a certain point. Things like that are kind of like, and then the police would come and we'd leave and stuff. But, and we did that at the mall, so many different things at the mall, because the mall was like this sort of social space. And so we'd go over to the mall and, do things like the suitcase that somebody could fit in was always useful in dragging the suitcase through the mall with somebody in it saying things, or speaking, stuff like that. But I think that all that, in a way, that kind of rebellion against the uniformity of like late capitalist culture, combined with a kind of sense of ethics and stuff that came from, apart from like my parents and other people around me, and my dad is a Holocaust survivor, and there was always like a healthy mistrust of authority. And so I think those things sort of combined in a way to form the basis of then what I later figured out was a political kind of agenda, and the political agenda is just basically, it's funny, I was thinking about like the movies I'd go see at the time and stuff, whatever, like Star Wars, it was the like Rebel Alliance, working against the sort of Dark Lords. So of course you have to like try to fight for something good.
So the formation was in Long John Silver's, and then Star Wars. There's kind of some main guideposts on the early YesMen project. I really enjoyed watching the film again. It had been a while, and I love the texture of the form, because it's before the crystal clear HD format that we're in, and then also so many sort of atmospheric elements of it, the technology, the internet itself, the kind of media sphere that we all lived in. I guess this film's from what year is the film again? It's 2000.
Well, that film we shot between 2004 and 2009.
2004, yeah. So it was like, it's because obviously the internet is a central player, because it's sort of the place that you guys, we've moved through time here. So you're out of college into your sort of professional groove as an artist, activist, prankster. And the internet is a force multiplier for that practice, letting you kind of trickster on a global stage. But it's also before the age of real disorientation that we're living in, where the sort of world of fake news and this kind of the right-wing intervention in the digital space. It was a more innocent time that the Yes Men Fix the World, that those interventions happened in. And I just was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on your experience of kind of being an early adopter of the internet's ability to disorient and pull people into a kind of vortex, and then watching sort of all of us fall into different versions of that. So I don't know if makes any sense. But.
It does make sense. And I think that's like, things have changed obviously dramatically, and that a lot of the methods and tech, that we used before don't make as much sense, or I should say there's like less opportunities to use them, because this sort of way that we move from having, kind of like a common source of information for like, I mean, whatever, 15 years ago or so, people were still getting all their news from roughly the same sources. There was a professional class of journalists that kind of processed things. And yeah, there were blogs, there were things like the Huffington Post that were emerging, that were very popular, but it still wasn't like the sort of mainstream of people were still consuming the same basic information about what was happening in the world. There was consensus about reality that was based in fact. And it was based in fact most of the time. I mean, on certain things it wasn't, but on most of the time when it came to like politics and stuff like that, there were facts that the professional class of journalists felt like they had to report. There's a code of ethics around that. And so we had this sort of like shared landscape. And now I think the model is basically to serve people what they want, and the algorithms allow for that. And so it's so fractured that everybody has their own reality, and we can live in our own reality, and the facts don't matter. And so our methods, like, it's weird because we relied on the idea that you would trick somebody because you would, impersonate somebody else. And impersonation's like one of the standards of comedy. It's like this, Shakespeare comedies, almost every one of them involves a case of mistaken identity. It's like the classic thing. And actually in most of these indigenous mytho-histories, like the characters change shape, they put on disguises, they shape-shift. And that's what we were doing. We're just like doing something traditional. It's just that we had this tool, the internet, that suddenly a lot of people didn't really understand, or didn't, and so there was a window for a lot of mischief and fun. And also it wasn't all commercial at that time. So it was, it was a great place to play. It was cheap. You could be in multiple places at the same time. I mean, it was kind of amazing. And I guess that window closed, and now, as it sort of shifted from this space for open communication and became now this way that we basically do data entry for companies on ourselves and enjoy it because it gives us something in return, like we see all our friends posting our images from the yearbook. And so we feel fulfilled, but at the same time we like give back. We just sit there doing like free data entry about us.
Yeah. Well, I have many more questions along this line, but I want to make sure to engage the folks that are out there. And so we've got a couple questions coming down the pipeline here. The first from Carol Swenson. Where can Yes Men be seen? I'd like to recommend it to other people. And maybe along with this question, you could elaborate on the body of Yes Men films, because
Right. Yeah, there's thank you. There's actually three of them, three Yes Men films. One is called The Yes Men, and then the other one is called The Yes Men Fix the World. That's the one that was shown before this. And then there's a third one called The Yes Men Are Revolting, which came out in 2014, which I know is a while ago. The Yes Men Are Revolting, I think you have to still pay to watch on some platform. I don't know if it's sometimes it comes up, the license like comes up and it's on Netflix or something like that. But if you do like Google Play, you can always pay to play it. There's a company called The Orchard that was distributing it, and I think they just sold it to some other company. I can't remember their name. But it's out there on platforms. The Yes Men are revolting. The Yes Men Fix the World. There's definitely a free copy floating around on that you can watch on the YouTube. And we didn't post it; somebody else did. But I know it's out there, and it hasn't been taken down because we still have the theatrical rights for that. So we haven't enforced our copyright on that one. And then the Yes Men first movie was released by United Artists, and it is probably available like on those pay things, but not a Netflix, or it would be like you could get it through an Amazon or a Google Play or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I think their whole catalog is available somehow.
Right. And if folks out there are interested in other work, I mean, I'd recommend searching on the Barbie Liberation Organization. This is one of Mike/Igor's early seminal interventions. If you've not encountered that through your lifetime, you're in for a treat. So if you look up the Barbie Liberation Organization, that'll take you pre-Yes Men and into an earlier phase of this work. Another question coming in from Evelyn Bemis. Have you ever felt or been physically threatened while in the middle of one of your fake presentations? If so, how has that informed your future works? No, never felt physically threatened while in the middle of not in the fake presentations. It's a very polite, these business environments tend to be very polite. And also we are introduced by the hosts as usually as the most important people in the room. And so no matter what you do, people are still, they would be reluctant to break this sort of, I guess, social contracts that, even if they don't agree with what you're saying, they usually keep it to themselves. So yeah, it's not actually threatening. It's the perception that what we do is dangerous. We discovered over the course of doing many of these to be a fiction. Like people be like, I mean, it did sort of take balls to do it initially, so to speak, but I have to realize, well, compared to doing sit-ins or doing these other kinds of more direct confrontations, direct action, it's very safe. And in fact, we've had times when the police have come and have been called, and they come in and basically take our side. Because at that point, you can tell them you're a comedian and why are these guys getting so upset? Because like at that point, it's usually you're in a private space, then you're not out in front of a bunch of conference goers by the time they're calling the police. They've got a little handsy with you in the petroleum conference with the candles.
That's true. Yeah, they did, and that
both with you and some of the camera people, they got a little handsy there.
They did, and that was a funny one because the conference organizer. So what happened there? It's really funny. We actually thought that the conference shut us down because of the content of the speech, but that was not what happened. So it was the Exxon Vivolium thing. We announced that that Exxon is making fuel out of the victims of climate change, and of course, people are holding a candle in their hand that's in the form of one of the victims, who was Reggie Watts, who at the time wasn't nearly as famous as he is now. So people didn't recognize him as the guy from, on TV. But what happened is there was a woman at one of the tables. We discovered this later because we had camera people sitting at the tables, volunteers who came to the event and sat at the tables with their handy cams. And so we heard a woman say, "That's that guy. I saw him on Showtime," or something, like her first movie. She'd seen it. And so she texted the conference organizers. And right after she texted them, she said, "Oh shit, I wish I hadn't done that." And then we pieced it all together and we saw, oh, once she texted them, then we saw in other shots, we saw them coming together and conversing and trying to figure out what to do. Sometimes we could even hear their conversations, and they didn't know what to do because they didn't know how to disrupt their own event. They knew that something was happening, but they didn't know what. And they didn't know how to disrupt it without it creating a bigger disruption. And then they tried to get the security to do it. But the security they were these like cowboy guys from the Calgary rodeo. They were like retired cowboys. They were these like big old men with handlebar mustaches and like giant hats and stuff. And so they were like, we're not going to take that guy out. There's like one guy in a suit telling the security to remove another guy in a suit who's on stage and is having a candlelight vigil for somebody who died. So eventually the conference organizer himself decided he was going to shut us down. And he was very large, and he came up and he like sort of took me by the scruff of the neck and walked me politely out. But at that point, they turned us over to the police. Actually, they put us in a room and they locked the door, and then the police came and they talked to us. And it was Canada and it was Calgary, and the police were really polite. And they're like, gee, why are they so angry at you guys? And they got us tea. And then they said, all right, well, we're going to walk you out of here, but we've got to write you a ticket because they're so angry. But like on the way out, can you like just pretend it's not funny? Just like keep a straight face because they're so angry. We just don't want any more trouble. So they took us out of their car, and they actually gave us a ride home. And they wrote us a ticket, and they said, we're not going to show up for court for this, so don't worry about it. It'll get dismissed. Anyway.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a question that I think, anyways, probably a lot of people wonder about, so I'll ask it, which is separate from getting tackled or beat up by these conference organizers, what about getting sued and the kind of legal, how do you think about legality in these actions when the pranks are obviously in some degree First Amendment, free speech, that kind of thing, but then but you also highlight the material damage that some of them caused, like the drop in share price and
Right.
etc. So is there, what just for people that are thinking about that?
Yeah. Well, we only got sued once, actually. We've been threatened many times. I mean, dozens and dozens of cease and desist letters. But and the first time you get a cease and desist letter, you think, oh shit, I'm going to get sued. But a cease and desist letter doesn't mean you're going to get sued. A cease and desist letter just means that the lawyers for the company that pays lawyers to enforce their trademark or copyright have done their job, which they perceive to be defending their copyright, which has nothing to do with interpreting the law. So you could be totally in your rights, making fun of their copyright or trademark, and it would still be something that their lawyers would say you're breaking the law on, because that's what they do. And usually though, so initially what we would do is we get those cease and desist letters and we use them as part of the story, because usually they have some really funny pull quotes in them. They'll say some really outrageous thing like, we are going to take your firstborn child and sacrifice it, that kind of thing.
Do you remember one in particular, a really choice cease and desist letter?
Oh God, we used to have a museum of those. We should put that up on the website. We should actually put up all the cease and desist letters, because they sometimes are funny. I mean, they're usually sort of form letter, but sometimes the lawyers would get into detail too, because remember, they get paid to do this. So if they see something that's a little unusual and they want to have fun, they're making, $300, $400, $500, $600 an hour. They're like a corporate lawyer working for ExxonMobil. It's like if they spend a week on that letter. So some of them are really fun. I can't remember offhand, but
Well, check.
we only got sued once, and it was by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And the difference with them is that they they weren't a corporation that had a brand to protect. They're incorporated, but they're a nonprofit, which is kind of absurd because they're nonprofit that works in the interests of mainly very large for-profit corporations. And their goals are basically to like eviscerate the laws of the United States. They're like attacking the government on behalf of large corporations. It's amazing what is allowed in the US, in the world of nonprofits, because of course people can then, like the Koch brothers, can donate money to them and write it off, which is just completely insane. It's like bonkers that you can actually use you can take tax money away from the government and pay a company that's whole purpose is to destroy taxes.
Money laundering by any other name smells just as sweet. Let's maybe this is a good moment to jump into one of the videos that we'll show in this aftermath session here. I think there's a video on cue regarding the Chamber of Commerce. Is that right, Jason?
Oh yeah, there is one. That's right.
Who's VJ here?
I think it's Jason VJing. Yeah.
I'm on it. You want to watch that one? Let's do it.
Let's rock and roll.
We wanted to make no, not this organization. The one across the street. The one that looks like a U.S. government office, but really is working against the government. In reality, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is a large corporation that is reported to lie to the public on behalf of even bigger corporations. They spend nearly $500,000 a day trying to convince the U.S. government to do really stupid shit, like killing environmental regulations and undermining workers' rights. But since they spend so much money on their hoaxes, many people believe them. And as it says, American free enterprise dream big, but their dreams are our nightmares because their plans are to prevent us from passing climate change legislation, which means we're screwed. Since the chamber was hoaxing us all, we decided to fight fire with fire. We would reveal one of their biggest lies by masquerading as them. We would hold a press conference as the chamber at the National Press Club. How would the world react to the chamber suddenly reversing its position on climate change?
A reversal on climate change from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It will reverse its position on the climate change bill and wants a carbon tax, if you will. All right, so the U.S. Chamber is denying it now. All right, so maybe not. Apparently it was a hoax. Either there is a group or some people or a person.
Is there any involvement of the White House whatsoever? I couldn't even begin to go there, Larry. This is the item we got. It has the Chamber's logo that we're all very familiar with.
Today, the country's largest business lobby, the Chamber of Commerce, got punked. Began early this morning when a press release went out, purportedly from the United States Chamber of Commerce. Amazingly, the release said that the Chamber would now support this legislation that it's spent months fighting against. Reporters were surprised and probably confused at this odd turn of events, but that was nothing compared to what actually happened at the press conference when it was held later on this morning. Watch this tape.
Clean coal is a technology that has not only not been proven, it basically doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm Eric Wolfschlegel. I'm with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This is not an official U.S. Chamber of Commerce event. So I don't know what pretenses you're here. I know some of you in the press world, but this is a fraudulent press activity and a stunt.
Who are you really, sir?
And do you have a business card? Are you with the U.S. Chamber?
I do. We can discuss afterwards.
Okay. Can I see your business card?
Can I see yours?
Are you here representing the U.S. Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, I work there, and you do not look familiar to me at all.
Could I see your business
Is this
card?
done?
Could I see your business
Is this
card?
done? Are you interrupting? Yes, I am. And, this guy does not represent the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Can we finish the game? No. This is not an official Chamber of Commerce. This is not, what is your position at the Chamber of Commerce?
I just spoke my position.
No, what is your title? Your official title at the U.S. Chamber?
I'm the assistant to Mr. Donahue.
Okay. This guy is a fraud. He's lying. This is, a stunt that I've never seen before. So if you'd like to actually talk to the legitimate Chamber of Commerce, I've got my business cards outside. This gentleman, I will assure you, does not have any business cards, and he's not legitimate.
Show me your business card. No, show me yours. No, show me yours.
They both look like imposters. What? It's
You got a
just,
business card?
it's so weird though. But
You don't look familiar. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says it was victimized.
Victims of a hoax by environmental activists.
A hoax actually led to the chamber admitting that there is a challenge for climate change. It seems like a good first step. So next up, hoax is about poverty, violence,
Education.
hunger.
The big education hoax. We've got a big education
the
hoax in
hoax
this
is a
country.
good first step.
Yeah.
Just today, the Chamber of Commerce changed positions, not courtesy of the YesMen with that stunt in Washington a few weeks ago. But they're now saying, surprisingly to me, and I'm glad about it, that they want to get legislation, and they're now working with the sponsors of the bill.
So hello. See if we're back. Hey, I'm back. What a blast from the past, and great to see see Rachel Maddow look, with that hair and makeup. Very different time, a different time. But that was the action that led to the lawsuit there.
That was the thing. And so then they sued us. But we have the Electronic Frontier Foundation defending us, and a bunch of really great organizations wrote amicus briefs and other things, participated in the suit, defending us. So yeah, they were suing us based on the idea that we were abusing their valuable trademark. Their case was based on the idea that we were doing the same thing as somebody who was like manufacturing Nike sneakers and selling them on the street in New York, and so it was kind of a mismatched case anyway. Like we probably would have won, and so the EFF was excited about taking it on, and about actually taking it all the way through the court system, because it could have set a favorable precedent in terms of the interpretation of trademark law. But in the end, it got tossed out by a judge after 4 years. So it sort of was sitting on a judge's desk for 4 years, and then finally they withdrew it didn't get tossed out. Technically, they withdrew. The Chamber of Commerce did, but they withdrew when a new judge was appointed, and they felt like they weren't going to have a chance anymore. I think they thought we would cave, but we were looking at it as a great opportunity to actually engage, borrowing from a bunch of activists who've been through the legal system to great effect, like the McLibel duo, who basically defended themselves from McDonald's in court and ended up having the hugest megaphone two unemployed people have ever had in history.
Now, it seemed like one of the things I loved in the Yes Men Fix the World is in the when the Bhopal BBC action kind of spins around and the cat's out of the bag and they know it's a hoax and they invite you back in. I think what Andy says is so smart, which is that Dow they've perpetuated a hoax, which is that they're powerless to help the people, that for some reason they can't do the right thing. And then in the Chamber of Commerce clip, when they come attacking Andy, he also once again flips it around and says, you're not legitimate, you're the hoax. And I guess I'm curious, how much of that is seat of your pants, this kind of sense that you're intervening in a world in which many, many lies are passed off as truth, and so the trickster can always kind of call that bluff? Is it, or is it because you're rehearsing? And do you go through, like for that Chamber of Commerce action, did you game out what would happen if they walked in? So is that
Not really, no.
Rehearsed? Yeah.
That one we hadn't, and it wasn't really rehearsed. We did end up, we incorporated that tactic into future actions by actually trying to get people to walk in, because it's like, wow, that worked so well. Like, we've been missing that element all along. We need somebody to interrupt the thing and to stop it. It's the most exciting thing. If someone comes in and tries to stop it, it's like classic action. And so,
you mean you would
so now we call them, what's that? Now we game it out. At the time we didn't. We hadn't at the time. Now when we think of it as part of the drama, and then you think of a few answers that you might give beforehand. God, it's so interesting though right now, thinking about this, about your question in relation to what's happening now with the Corona situation, the COVID lockdowns and stuff, because I think it's that moment where the myth that it's a giant moment for the world, where the myth that we couldn't stop the conveyor belt has been busted, like the idea that we all had to be walking on this thing, otherwise the world would stop, has now been already proven not true. I mean, although there are various things that are crashing, and people are suffering in untold different ways, it's actually, it does prove that it's not impossible. It's not like the natural system is not that we keep going to work and doing all these things, and that planes keep flying, and that everything keeps moving,
And that's could write checks in theory. I mean, in other parts of the world, I haven't gotten my check here in the United States. I think nobody has yet, but they're in theory starting to send the money out, and it's
over in Ireland, just over here, like people started instantly getting like $300 a week. It's just like instant. It's just like, oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do. And there's similar things in Germany. You have friends who are artists, and they're like, oh yeah, I just got a $5,000 check because we're suffering here. And you're like, huh, okay, so you can do that. And so what's
like deep blowing, that's
yeah. I mean, the fact that all these things are possible, that there's so many possible ways of approaching the problem, but we're led to believe that all this is, and all of it is impossible. And I think of 6 months ago, you just talk to anybody and said, oh yeah, we're going to stop 95% of international air travel. People would be like, that you're fucking insane.
Yep.
I mean, anyway, it's an interesting moment, I think, really interesting thinking about it.
Yeah. So, and in terms of what's possible in this moment, and what was possible before, I guess, Jason, what's on tap in terms of other videos that we might jump to?
We've got the NRA video.
Oh, NRA. Wow, that's a nice long one.
We wouldn't watch the whole thing, though.
Wow, I just found some meat in the snail. Look. Well, I started foraging. I'm ready for the future here. So I've been out, collecting the whelks and the winkles.
And with the government checks, you can't buy better food than that.
Well, the UK, yeah, I'm in the UK here. It's a little different than Ireland, and the money's slower and stuff. So we're looking at subsistence. We're looking at ways to go the old ways, and it turns out it's pretty good living here. Like, look at the size of the what are these things called again? Limpets. Look at the size of that limpet. That's a big limpet. See, that's a lot of meat in that creature.
It's the biggest limpet I've seen all day.
Yeah.
Speaking of hunting and gathering, why not the NRA? Let's do it.
Yeah, let's move into hunting now. We're going to talk about guns because this game here is really tiny. Oh, there.
Today, there's a plague of violence that needs to be stopped. Did I lose my speech? And that is why we're here to launch a revolutionary program to finally share the safety. I'm honored to introduce Hensley Cochran. Thank you very much, Todd. And hello to you all. Hello.
You guys have definitely been spotted by security.
Oh shit. We gotta get out of here. Hey, where's the exit?
The hoax was an elaborate one.
Hundreds of oil executives were duped today.
I'm Andy. And I'm Mike. Ever since the 1990s, Mike and I have been impersonating big and powerful
When you're not even on the directory, you don't even have a phone number.
It's come to that, has it? You're coming for
It's a group of pranksters who call themselves the YesMen.
Because sometimes it takes a lie to expose the truth. My name is Todd Billings. My phone number is, what the fuck is my phone number? So every time there's a mass shooting in the United States, the NRA holds a press conference and says the problem is that there are not enough guns.
To put armed police officers in every single school in this nation.
Thank you for calling the Reagan Library.
Hi, my name is Todd Billings from Share the Safety. I'm in LA now, and we want to go ahead with this, but I'd love to come up and have a look at the facility. When the police around the country started getting a lot of attention for killing unarmed young black
On
men.
the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, outrage and anger.
If the NRA were true to what they usually say, they would say, like, let's arm all the young, unarmed people who are being killed by guns. The solution is to arm them.
I actually have to get your event approved first
I see.
to take care of it.
Okay, great.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing you around 2 o'clock.
Thanks. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Bye.
Okay. She said that it's not going to be a problem, but they do have to do a little bit of a vetting process to get the thing approved. So I think that we should probably put up a temporary page at sharethesafety.org for 24 hours, if possible, and just make it seem like something that's totally about just safety. Is there a way to just swap the website out with just a placeholder page?
It's still so dirty.
Don't worry, we'll buy some time with a priest or something for you, okay? We're here in Southern California. You gotta make me look like an NRA spokesperson. Because we are going to impersonate the National Rifle Association at the Reagan Presidential Library. Yep. It's starting to happen. You want me to look like King Leopold?
Anything could be fun for an eye.
What do you sound like when you have a beard like that? Oh, right. Well, fuck the children, get the guns in there. Oh, no.
Parents, we decided to name our initiative Share the Safety. And for the past few weeks, we've created business cards, drafted press releases, and built our website.
You know, the website is basically a buy one, give one program, just like Tom's shoes, but for weapons.
The gut does not play that.
We even shot a Share the Safety promo video that was just absurd enough to feel like something the actual NRA might do.
These days, the most endangered species is the law-abiding American citizen, especially those living in poor urban centers.
For a moment, people look at it and they wonder if it really is the NRA.
Dumb laws keep the urban poor unable to acquire life-saving firearms. That's why we at the NRA are teaming up with Smith & Wesson to share the safety. When you purchase a limited edition line of Smith & Wesson handguns at sharethesafety.org, we will donate an appropriate firearm to an at-risk low-income citizen in the urban center of your choice.
You know, when you first brought this idea up, I remember laughing a lot and then thinking like, we may not be the right ones to do this, you know?
Because there's so many black people in the NRA. How could white people represent the NRA, right? That's what you were thinking?
There is one black person in the NRA. His name is Cullen War.
All right. Hello, hello. So,
hello.
Hey. So so we kind of left that clip halfway through, I suppose. What's a kind of cliffhanger? The Share the Safety concept was, why don't you tell us what it was and how it played out then ultimately?
Yeah. So the Share the Safety thing was basically like a Tom's shoes, you know, buy one, give one to a poor person for guns. And it was just an extension of the NRA's idea that more guns equals more safety. So, and you know, so we impersonated the NRA and put that thing together. And it was, you know, when we launched it, all we did was like book a space in the Reagan Presidential Library and then announce, you know, to the world that we were doing it there, and had like video cameras and stuff on site. So it was kind of it was actually pretty fun and easy, and it did end up getting a lot of attention. I mean, it was meant to kind of highlight the absurdity of the situation, you know, of that basic idea, the logic that's the illogical logic of the safety, and also pointing out the sort of racist origins of the NRA. Well, I shouldn't say racist origins, but the racist twist that the NRA took in the 60s when it, you know, it went from being a sort of organization that was focused on things like teaching people how to use weapons responsibly to actually enforcing a kind of racist status quo. I mean, it was a very overt switch. And so really this project was a lot of it. And the film, the 22-minute video that we made was about sort of exploring that racism that was there, and then tying it to, you know, what's happening today, or what was happening at that time a couple of years ago.
Have you ever, it's like, I remember after, you know, I'm not sure which mass shooting in the school came out, the idea of arming the teachers. But I know when I heard that, I thought you guys were at it again, you know, I thought it was, but then it's obviously not. Have you had that experience? Any moments where you hear things coming down the pipe that you think must be hoaxes, or have you been punked? You know, have you, as a consumer of media, fallen into a hoax yourself that you remember?
I've definitely fallen for some things. I mean, including, it's very confusing right now with what, you know, Trump says at press conferences, you know, when in the days when he was first announcing like closures of, I mean, first there was the shutdown of air travel with China, but then there was a month and a half or something before the next thing, which was shutting down travel to and from the U.S. And the first thing that he said is that like we're suspending all travel to and from the U.S., which wasn't true. It was like, you know, it's just so weird and sloppy, and you know, and then those kinds of things. You know, the kind of misinformation is you're constantly having to kind of like fact check, and the more pressure there is that applies to whatever, you know, is going on in your life, the trickier it is to stay on top of it and kind of like without reacting or overreacting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of firsthand dealing with disinformation recently.
Mm-hmm. But
yeah.
You know, I guess this kind of loops us back to the earlier conversation about, you know, the sort of vortex, the information vortex, and the shifting terrain we all live underneath, and that we stand on, the terrain we stand on in terms of, you know, for me, I mean, what I remember in the 90s as a student of media studies was to think, being taught to question back then what was the hegemonic, I grew up mostly in the era of like 3 channels on TV, NBC, ABC, CBS, and the news came down those pipelines. And like you said, it was kind of vetted by these boards, and it was embedded inside of commercials. So there was always this question of corporate influence and, you know, tiptoeing around the government and things. And so there was ways that the information was compromised, but it was also, those streams were kind of vetted and collective and centralized. And so they needed to be attacked and questioned. And so there was this era of like wanting to question the hegemony of the broadcast model. And then the internet came up and was this sort of hope of like democratizing the media. And that was kind of, to me, the playground of the YesMen, the first wave of that, when you guys could kind of intervene in the web and trick people, put out fly traps, and people would fall into them and you could play with them. But now it feels like we're in another wave. We're all the way up to, like you mentioned, the president here, that creature, and the constant gaslighting and this feeling of like living inside of a top to bottom, a disorientation system. I guess it's strange to ask the trickster this question, but is there a way out of that, the disorientation? I mean, I know like the internet has different models for finding veracity or for testing information. Like Wikipedia, I think, is sort of famous for being like a somewhat decent place where people can converge around a notion of truth. Do you have any like guidance for those of us who feel like our head is spinning and we question reality, question truth, question these things, but also want to grab onto something? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's kind of the question right now for media in general. I mean, I think that one option is to also, you know, to get reading some trusted sources, which, you know, there's a bunch of newspapers that are still operating and they're pretty reliable. So that's one thing. And I think you can also like tune up your bullshit meter. Like everybody's bullshit meters are constantly getting better. I think, you know, we're gullible, but like if you sense that something's a little weird and you're getting a direct email about it, then chances are it's a lot weird. You know, and then there's ways of like looking at it, but I think that this is a major. I mean, I think what's weirder is that there's like those of us who are trying to make sense of it seem to be in a pretty good position because we're actually trying to make sense of it, and maybe it's making us very vigilant, you know. But there's a lot of people I think aren't trying to make sense of it too, or who have actually even opted out in a way. Like I look at, like I can't help but feel like I used to be able to not avoid the news because there was a newspaper and there was I know this sounds crazy, but like I look at what my kids do and if they're like on TikTok or something like that, or whatever. If they're getting all their information through their screen, they don't have to read the news. They can opt out completely from like a really young age.
Well, I trust newspapers so much. I had this one framed.
Oh, look at that! Oh,
gotta trust. Yeah, trust this newspaper. Trust.
There you go. That's
this
why.
Is a, yes, for the viewing public out there, this is a YesMen produced newspaper here. So.
Yeah, the old fake New York Times.
The fake New York Times.
It is. I mean, you know, you got to do what you got to do. All the news that one hopes to print sometimes has to go to print. So,
is any of this?
Yeah.
Are these kind of questions in politics haunting the YesMen these days? What's next for the YesMen?
I mean, right now we're doing this thing called the Yes School or the Yes Lab, which is, you know, about training activists who want to use the tactics we've used in the past. And that's going well. We're doing workshops. I mean, it's now migrating to Zoom. So like this moment here, we're having to try to figure out how to do these Zoom workshops, which is, it's okay. It has its drawbacks. We're trying to figure out what to do. You know, projects, obviously a lot of the stuff that we used to do, we can still do, because if you're doing things that are online that involve virtual kind of action or masquerading in virtual ways, that's still possible. So I think we're just gonna see, you know, like where this thing goes. I mean, it seems like there's so much possibility in this moment and what comes out of this moment. So I'm really excited to kind of try to dig into that and, you know, have that sort of enthusiasm and energy, which I feel like it's actually for me a really good moment because I've had to slow down, which is great. I'm enjoying it. This slow down, but I haven't thought about what I've been thinking about, but I haven't come to conclusions about how to act yet. But I do want to kind of figure out ways of riding this wave, this wave of slow, and making it, trying to make it work and make sense to translate into it. There's a lot of people talking about this, like, I know that like Franny Armstrong, who did the Age of Stupid film,
testing capacity that's
has a show called The Flip right now, where it's talking about how do we take what's happening now and learn from it and translate it into useful political action, especially on things like climate change and inequity.
Right on, right on. Well, we have a question coming in from Evelyn, one of the public who's out there. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for chiming in. And she's asking if you'd ever infiltrated a Trump press briefing or ever wanted to, or I guess the bigger version of this question, I suppose, would be, have the YesMen done any sort of Trump-oriented interventions? And if not, have you seen any that you've enjoyed? I personally have been kind of mystified by how little political art there's been about Trump. And I have this theory that it's because he's kind of this signifier that absorbs all heat, and anything that like is done to attack him, he kind of owns. There's nothing subtle about his evil that you can pull out for a sort of illuminating work of art somehow. Like I remember under every president, there's been so many portraits and political artwork using the face, and there's relatively little of it, I feel like, under Trump. So anyways, have you guys done any Trump interventions, or have you seen any that you find interesting?
We were doing one right when he was elected. I mean, and it was like, actually, it was supposed to launch before the election, 2 weeks before, or 3 weeks before, but then the organization that we were working with got cold feet because they were worried that that anything that he could use to claim undermined his victory, because basically they were so sure that Hillary would win that they didn't want to launch this stupid project we were doing. because they imagined it could give him a reason to complain about his loss. That's how twisted the logic was of everybody at that time. I mean, it was like completely, everybody was basically living in a weird little bubble. And so we ended up launching it on election day. The day after election day, which was crazy because he had just won and that was not part of the plan. But it was a weird project. We'd actually rented a space at the top of the Trump Soho Hotel, which no longer exists, but at the time there was like this Trump hotel there. And we had this event. It was crazy. But since then, we've done things that are about his policies and stuff. We haven't done direct Trump things. There might be things to do right now, but might be things coming up in the near future.
Good.
But it's true. He's kind of like Teflon because even, like you said, even the look, like if I see the Trump baby balloon or some absurd image of Trump, it doesn't work because he already looks so weird. I mean, he's already so extreme. Like the massive amount of orange makeup and the crazy hair and it's like, how do you caricature a clown?
Yeah, there you go.
Like, where do you go?
Well,
So
I
make
think
him
that's a
more
great
orange.
question, Lee. It's a haunting prompt for the world we're in. How do you caricature a clown? And maybe we all put that in our pipes and smoke it, or sit on our crumpets and think about it. Because I'm going to take that one home tonight. That's the only place I can take it tonight. Not going anymore. But it's great to see you. I know it's late where you are, and
It is. I guess I should go to bed. It's past my bedtime.
Yeah, but I want to say, is it a good time to wrap up, Jason? You think we've done our duties here?
Well, it's 12:06 in Scotland, which means it's officially Igor's birthday.
Ooh.
Oh wow, that's true. I'm old now. Everybody.
I think we should unmute all of the participants. And Igor, we got you just a little something.
What?
Yeah.
A cake?
Yeah, we got you. Well, no, the cake, because we're not going to the store. So we got you a waffle with ice cream.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so let's see if we can unmute some people here. And I don't know if we can. Well, I'm going to sing because I'm going to sing, and Alex, you're going to sing.
All right.
And participants can unmute themselves now.
Okay, Amra's going to sing, and anyone who wants to unmute themselves. So we're going to sing to Igor, and it's the song called Happy Birthday. You guys ready? Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear you. Happy birthday, dear Igor.
It's very surreal.
Happy birthday to you.
Put out. Nicely done. All right, everybody. We're going to see you guys coming up soon. Friday, Tuesday, every Friday and Tuesday, we've got new events. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. I know how busy you are with movies and homeschooling, and Igor, thanks. I can't wait till you're back here in Santa Fe. Igor provided us with another video, which we can watch on the way out. You guys are all going to get surveys in your email box. We'd love if you could fill it out. We're doing our best to tweak and improve this program as we move forward. So your help is much appreciated. Everybody, please stay safe. And we're going to play one more video for you. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Great to see you. Thanks for the birthday.
We knew there was a way to pull the plug on big oil.
It was time for a showdown. Ever since we met Gitz, we'd wanted to do something together. Posing as government bigwigs, we would infiltrate a Homeland Security conference and announce that the USA was outlawing fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables. And the best part? The new wind and solar power plants would be owned by native tribes as partial reparations for genocide.
To actually have white people wearing bands that say native headdress and instead of a feather, a windmill, this is us making fun of the American ideal of what it is to be Indian.
This would truly be a second Thanksgiving. I told the conference that I represented General Colin Powell, and they were pumped to have him speak.
So our speakers are running just a tad late. We're not going to worry about it. General Colin Powell is coming to speak to us, and he's bringing a couple of colleagues.
General Powell, of course, would not show up, but his colleagues were nearly there.
Oh my God, you guys. Is this not going to be a total giveaway?
No.
Is there a way to, like, you know, maybe make it a little less like it is?
Who's the other person? Yeah.
Well, the Admiral, and he's followed by the Deputy of the Secret Service. So you've got two, like, exceedingly senior people.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to just confirm with them because they're so late. I'm beginning to wonder what's going on.
Mr. Benedict Waterman. Hi, I'm Barbara Alexander. I'm so glad to meet you.
Hello. Hi. I'm nervous. Me and Tito are sitting down. We're trying to make small talk. Have you tried yoga?
No, not yet. I need to. I'm having a hard time finding the yoga pants that'll fit.
That's the most yoga I've ever seen on my face.
He's a scientist, so it's...
Does he do like a lot of like somebody went.
I don't know. That is a bad hair day. These guys weren't exactly tree-hugging eco-freaks. We had an aspiring Republican congressman, a two-star general, lots of defense contractors, and weird security guards in trench coats. How would they react to an energy revolution?
Our first speaker is Undersecretary of Policy Implementation at the Department of Energy, Mr. Benedict Waterman.
On behalf of the Department of Energy, I'm very excited to announce today a great new plan that will do nothing less than convert the United States energy grid into one that's powered entirely by renewable sources. As the dire reality of climate change becomes more and more inescapable, people will take the future into their own hands, and historically, we know that popular resistance is a force that can only with difficulty be countervailed. A revolutionary energy program today is easier than a real revolution tomorrow. By 2030, America will produce 100% of our energy from renewables, establishing us once again as a global leader in confronting the supreme challenge of climate change. We're excited to be working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and some of the largest tribes from Arizona to the Dakotas to site major wind and solar facilities that will provide a large chunk of America's power. The tribes will own these facilities. It'll provide an enormous stimulus to the economy and great resilience in the face of future threats. It's time for a second Thanksgiving.
I am Dana Slowhorse. I'm the Director of Industrial Development for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I am a member of the Wenatchee Nation, and joining me is my nephew here. He's a fire chief, a war chief, a water chief, and he's actually also a midwife. He helps young mothers. There's a long storied history between the Americans and indigenous peoples. And it always hasn't been a beneficial relationship, at least not to us. For the first time, we have a voice, and we will own, truly own, this new energy production. And that's progress. And it'll build us a stronger economy, a brighter future. It will give something to our children. There was a lot of work done on Benedict's half because we want to acknowledge and honor that. And so I actually went and killed a deer. I tanned the hide myself. Give you this gift.
That was good.
Month is gratitude between our two peoples. We want to acknowledge this with a round dance. I encourage everybody to join us together. Just form a circle around all this if possible.
All the way around?
Yeah, we can do all the way around. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I composed this song for this occasion. I made it a simple song so we can sing it together because it's not just my song, it belongs to all of us. Way out hey, way out ho, way out ho, way out hey, way out ho, way out ho, way out hey now, way out hey now, way out ho ho ho, way out ho ho ho. The sun gonna shine, the sun gonna shine, the wind gonna blow, the wind gonna blow. That's all we need. That's all we need to continue to grow. To continue to grow. Way out ahead. Way out ahead.
It would be worthwhile, I think, get an opportunity to perhaps, chat with you or your staff, or whoever you deem appropriate.
What kind of effect do you expect this to have on the share price of energy companies today?
This is ultimately going to benefit the economy tremendously.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How did the midwifery come about for you?
So, yeah, I have a lot of sisters and
a lot of grateful nieces and nephews.
Definitely.
So we're part of Northrop Grumman. We're a large business, but very interested in seeing how we can support this novel cause.
That's fantastic. So excited.
Yeah, this is outstanding. I feel really good. It's a very emotional day.
Great.
I was surprised to see someone from Northrop Grumman acting so excited. You weren't talking about weapons, you're talking about renewables.
You know, surprisingly enough, most people are not megalomaniacally insane. Even people who work for Northrop Grumman. And if they're given the opportunity to do what they actually believe in their hearts is the right thing, they go with it.
The fact that we could get all these people that we think of as being from the dark side, like dance in support of renewable energy, is that there are very few people who actually want us to continue on this fossil fuel path. And we have to force our leaders to actually do what we need them to do. And then people will follow, except for a few oil company execs.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Don't forget that song now. You sing it anytime.
Can getting a room full of defense contractors to dance for energy revolution actually change the world?
Probably not on its own.
But what we've realized is, to keep going, we've got to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's the only way we're going to win this fight.
Well, the movie's about what we can do to help make sure that things are okay in the future. You know, for you, there's a lot of people who are just like making a lot of money, sometimes in ways that aren't very good for the world.
But why money? It's just a stupid old piece of paper.
That's a hard one. But, you know, there's also a lot of people fighting back, changing the weather.
Because you're making movies to stop it.
It's only a little part of stopping it, what we do.